Hey Tim, mate, I don't know if you're going to bother listening to this or not. You probably will, you probably won't, I don't know. But you're still doing this, you got that video there that I'm just looking at, and this nice little blue radar picture. So I've just put, Tim, right, if you even listen to this, I've just linked Russell Brand's video that he put out. You can see it there, right, underneath my smiley face. But you got your channel set not to take links, so it's not clickable, but you can probably copy-paste it. But I wanted to say this, and I'll try not to take much of your time up, right, because I know you're a really busy guy. Firstly, right, so, look, I've noticed there's a law, right, there's an actual law, an act of law that says that people cannot disparage the police, right, or they can't persuade the police to go on strike, or they're not supposed to disparage the police from doing their job or anything like that, even in morale, right? Now, my campaign's called bentcop.biz. It has been since 2013. They never liked it, right? In fact, they took all my stickers down and prosecuted me illegally, right? Even though it's a petition to government. That is a contempt of Parliament. I can call it what I want because it's the right to petition and you can't be prosecuted, right? So the fact that my campaign can exist and I can have it, right? I submitted evidence under the campaign name to the digital ID review that the government just did, like Big Brother Watch asked for evidence to be submitted and help them out, right? The fact that I can have my campaign, right, and the fact that it exists because it is a petition to government, right, and the fact that it might disparage police but they can't prosecute me because I can call it what I want because it's a petition to government, right? The fact that it's protected, and that proves it's protected because it can exist and I can call it that, right, is something, right? Now, I found the police had been using illegal road signage all around England with local councils and doing people, right, ripping us off, misleading people, misdirecting people, right? The criminals, right? And they protected themselves and did me, right? So my entry point to this is, right, that is corrupt, right? Now, if a authority acts against a law criminally, right, they forfeit all their rights, right? So you can go around and say, you're a criminal, you need to be prosecuted, right? Now, if that's disparaging, tough, right? Because they're the criminals, right? From that point on, they're the criminals. Now, this is what this is about, right? There's a lot of campaigners and a lot of protesters, right? And I have been studying this deep research to get all the legislation together to prove that we can't be prosecuted once we take something to Parliament, including advertising and promoting it, and including, like, you know, misdemeanors and crimes, right? Now, we need to prove that because otherwise you can't do anything. Now, the government have been lying and hiding that for a very, very long time, but there's a lot of evidence to prove that even the government are lying. Now, that the police MP, right, she's just set up this new SWAT force, you know, MI5, SWAT force, police force, whatever you call it. They're going to be crawling all over you. They're going to be crawling all over me. They're going to be crawling over all the Stop ULEZ campaigns, you know. I don't really have much to do with Tommy Robinson, but they'll be crawling over him as well, right? They'll be monitoring all these posts and everything, right? So this statement is not just to you, right? It's to the police, the security services, and all the MPs, right? To start with, let's start from fact and truth. We can collect signatures to remove any MP by petition, right? We can do that. They don't have to be prosecuted by the police. They don't have to be a paedophile. They don't have to be convicted and send a notice to the Speaker of Parliament after an election petition, right? If you're not happy with them, right, you can collect signatures on a bit of paper or electronically to remove them because you're not happy with the person you were elected, right? You can do that. Now, they're currently blocking us and obstructing us from doing that on e-petitions because they're liars, they're corrupt, and they're criminals, right? And we're pointing out malpractice in government, and they're blocking those petitions as well. So my entry position into this, right, is they forfeited They have forfeited, right? They're the ones who have forfeited their rights, and we are there to resolve it, right? And when you're taking it to Parliament, it's none of the police's business. It's not the business of the police, the magistrates' court, the Crown Court, or the High Court, right? It's a matter of Parliament, and you don't do prosecutions then. So I don't know what MI5 and the Secretary of State for Policing and the police chiefs are playing at, because they're the ones acting criminally. And if you want to challenge the Secretary of State for Policing on that, she's wrong, because they've been lying about the whole thing. We can even go to the bar in Parliament and claim privileges at that bar with a petition, according to Mr Tinker MP, in a Petitions Committee report on public petitions in 1944, right? A lot of the Esquimé books are misleading as well, right? So the wording you can use in a petition, right? A lot of them are very strong language, according to the 1832 report by Robert Peel. And it was Robert Peel who created the police force. Now, there were a few things. The 1688 Bill of Rights was way before a full-time extensive police force. It's based on the fact that the citizens, the democratic power and the electors are the decision makers when it comes to the law, and electing MPs for them to make the law. The king is still in charge and directing of the police and the armed forces. Obviously, you've got the Secretary of State for Defence and Policing and so forth. And the reason for that is so no one overthrows the country and the king. But that is only so that people, the police basically protect the king, right? But not the laws of the country and how the country is going to be done and what happens to it, like if there's going to be immigration or if we want a law repealing or whatever, right? Okay? I mean, I'm thinking of doing a petition now to say that we need to get democratic control over the direction of the police to the voters, to the voting power. We need to be able to direct the police by electoral power and votes in all of their actions. And if that requires some protection for the king in law to say that, okay, the king hands the power over to the public for directing and controlling the police, but we're not allowed to obviously direct and control the police towards the government and king, right? Unless, the ministers have broke the law, then I think that would be fair. But currently, as it stands, the police are ignoring our electoral power. Now, this is the thing. These are the things that have changed since the 1688 Bill of Rights, when we can remove ourselves from the accountability of the common law courts, the petty sessions and the Crown Court level, right? Because we're raising it out of those courts. Now, the thing is that, firstly, police were elected. The police officers and sheriffs, the people with authority, right, who were sworn in on oath, right, they're elected. It means you vote for them, right? So it's all right saying, there's a law against disparaging the police and the police, you're not allowed to make the police go on strike or, put them off doing their job or whatever. Look, right, they won't have a job, right? If they don't do what the voters want, then we don't elect them, right? So we need to bring that in. We need to bring that straight back in now. So if Mark Rowley, sends his police force a lot of protesters, then he won't have a job, because he's meant to be there solely at the grace of the public and elected, right? So we need to quickly make a law or get a law made where if the police officer, not just the police and crime commissioners, right, if a police chief, right, is not keeping the public happy, the voters, then we can remove him by a petition, like a recall petition. He doesn't have to be convicted of a crime. He doesn't have to have been proved to have done a crime. He doesn't have to be convicted by a magistrate's court or a crown court, or he doesn't have to be prosecuted, right? If the public want that police officer moved, they can go around and sign an official petition made and get him removed like that, and get one in who they want in, right, who's going to be directed to the public. That's to start with, because that's how it's meant to be, right? And then there's the other privilege, which is in the in the Privileges of London, right, I've just read it. So they had a little, like, price list, right, like a little shopping list, right? So if you wanted to get a warrant to arrest someone, then you went in and you had to pay money, then you could get a warrant, right? And then you could go arrest them, or the police would, right? You're directing them, you're paying the money, then they go do it. Or if you want to prosecute someone for stealing your things, right, there's a little charge and a little cost, and then there's little fees for, like, certain writs or getting a lawyer to do this or that, right? But it's like you're paying them, right, per job. So if they don't do the job, they don't get the money. Now what's happening is, right, they're just scooping the tax offers, right? We don't pay them per job. It's like, right, we're having this money off you, and we're buying all this stuff with it, and we're going to do this and that with it, right? So it's effectively they're taking money off us and using it to do what they want with, or what they think best, or what Madame Tassad wants, or the Secretary of State for Policing, or the MI5 chief, right? That means that who's directing the police? Well, actually, these elected people who are meant to be elected to go into Parliament represent us for what we want, right? So that effectively means, like, the Labour Party and the Conservatives and Lib Dems, right? That, because they control the MPs, right? They're telling so currently we've got a police force which is doing what political parties want, not voters. So that can't be right. So they're not actually. I've never had police act on any crime that I reported, because most of the crimes that I reported have been the government, right? Institutionally corrupt crimes or malpractices in administration, right? They investigate nothing. They wouldn't even investigate someone or prosecute them who put on my address and private details all over the internet when I had my channel, right? So the police aren't doing it. Police, they might say, well, we're keeping the streets safe. So, if we weren't doing his job, you'd know about it because there'd be more criminals everywhere. Well, apparently there's never been as much crime. There's never been as much high crime rate, and there's never been as many criminals in the country. So, if the police said, oh, well, you can't say that, we're not doing his job because, if we just didn't do the job right, then there'd be loads of crime. Well, no, actually, we're paying you. You're meant to be doing the job right. You're claiming that, because we're here, there's no crime. But no, there's more crime and there's worse crime, right? And now there's even more people coming into the country and creating crime. They're stopping us from doing something about that, right? So riddle me that. So we need to get a grip, like a grip on this police force, right? And get it to do what we want it to do, not what it wants to do, right? And that's the problem. Now, the other thing is these social media platforms and the internet, right? To start with, right? We're meant to have freedom of speech when it comes to parliamentary causes and matters, right? Completely and totally. What the government have done is they've stitched us up, right? They knew about this. They got Mark Zuckerberg, Sergey Brin, all these American companies, right, which are now... Notice, don't you think it's a bit peculiar and odd? Why isn't there a leading British platform like YouTube? Why don't the BBC do it under English law? Why isn't there, a big, social media thing like Facebook, but based in England? Well, they're all American. So they're all based overseas. They're all under American law. And that insane, ridiculous Section 32, which says they can take down constitutional protected material in America, but not in England, right? Which the Americans were taking down all the English people's stuff during COVID, and the English were taking down all the American stuff in COVID, so they couldn't be accountable, right? Because it was like some sort of cross-party, overseas, globalist... initiative, right? Look, right, we've been stitched up. I've had my evidence taken down on my channel for Parliament, right? And that is a contempt in law, a criminal contempt. Police are doing nothing. I reported to the police. The police are doing sweet FA. That is a high crime, not a low crime, not a kick in the teeth, not, stealing something. That is a very high crime, right? And they're doing nothing. Now, I've complained to Parliament, and they're doing nothing, right? So, we haven't got enforcement online for us to uphold the law. All the police want to do now is set up SWAT group, right? against us. Oh, what are you doing wrong? What are you doing wrong? What are you doing wrong? Where is the like, oh, the platforms have done something wrong? Where is the like, oh, someone else has done something wrong, right? Where is the enforcement in our favour to aid us in political causes? Well, oh no, the police, they can't choose a side in a political cause. They can't help you. Well, no, it's supposed to be refereeing, right? They're not even doing that, right? So where is the extradition of Mark Zuckerberg for constitutional corruption, right? Where is the extradition of Neil Mohan for constitutional corruption? They extradite Assange. All Assange did, right, was get a couple of photographs and put them in the newspaper, right? We're talking about people who are trying to get the law changed or law made, right, through a process, and we're actually being taken out and taken down by companies and businesses in a foreign country, right? So the police are currently helping, right, Mark Zuckerberg, Elon Musk, and Sergey Brin to neutralise the electors of England, right, in the political campaigns, because they're based in another country and they really couldn't give a flying fuck, right? There is no Section 32 in England at all whatsoever, and the brand new Online Safety Act has got legally privileged material exemption all the way through it. My channel is legally privileged because I've made a declaration that it is for that use. So my channel is legally privileged, and I'm going to have to do something about it because Parliament isn't. Right? Parliament isn't doing anything about it. I've complained about it. They're meant to resolve every grievance, right? So we're being stitched up by these foreign platforms. And we've also been set up against each other by all these block and ban buttons when you're not really meant to be allowed to block and ban people who are doing political causes to Parliament. So they've already got us all filtered and locked down against each other. And now they're putting this ridiculous SWAT force in place when people have already, there's already heavy restrictions on what you can post and not post anyway, right? Which is not lawful. It's not lawful because it's obstructing, sharing petitions and things like that freely. And then we've got the e-petitions itself. We should be getting all these matters resolved on paper, right, to government through the proper means of doing it. There shouldn't need to be as many protests or complaining, right? But Parliament have been rejecting them all. Now, they've been lying about what you can and can't do. Like I said, I mentioned collecting signatures to remove an MP, calling out malpractices in government, getting the signatures for it and compelling MPs to act. The Petitions Committee have been absolutely lying through their teeth about what we can and can't do. The policy that they've got signed by the Leader of the House of Commons and the Chair is illegal, right? And they're making up these, they call them standards, they're not even laws, right? They're not standing orders of Parliament. They're not written down in the standing orders. Erskine May's book is not law either, it is all advice, right? Because, you can get the Sir Robert Peel who started the police force, his investigation of the Petitions Committee in 1832, right? People were being given evidence. They were giving evidence to him. He even declared it was like a superintendence, right? Okay, superintendence. So, they confirmed that you can pretty much do what you want. And George Strickland said that, there isn't any petition that he hasn't managed to argue into Parliament, right? Past the clerk anyway. And they're not even wanting to engage with us. So we're being blocked, right? We're being blocked and obstructed politically on the e-petitions website, right? And, look at Michael Westwood's petition with the 3 million signatures and so forth. Parliament didn't act on that. I petitioned the King to, the King's Most Excellent Majesty. I've got petitions coming out of every, crevice you can think of, right? I've got petition. Everything's a petition. You know how many petitions done I have? I've got petitions with the Welsh Government. I've got petitions with Parliament. I've got petitions on paper to the House of Lords, to the House of Commons. There's nothing that I'm doing that isn't a petition, right? In fact, this is a petition because this is the evidence we need to get the petition submitted, right? So we've already been undermined and lied to and obstructed, and the result of it is that people have no option except to do very strong remonstrances in public, and now they're wanting the police to lock down on that. So I've had enough of the police. This is about the police. This is what it is. It's about the police, because the police was never meant to be a body. It was never meant to be an organisation, a body. It was never meant to be a body, right? Sheriffs, right, are like at the till at the counter of a shop, right? You go in there, I want a warrant, right? You go in there, right, I want someone prosecuted. You go in there, I want, 3 packets of crisps, Mars bar, and a chocolate milkshake, right? Here's some evidence I've got against, this person. I want them prosecuted. Here's electoral commission. They're not doing anything right. I want action taken against them. Well, you have to go see the ombudsman. We don't know this police. No, well, I'm doing it to Parliament then, right? So there's a bit of paper. There's a stamp on it. Give me the warrant. I'm going after them. If anyone gets in my way, right, they can get out of my way, right? Because that is the observation of due process of law. Now, the problem is that we are not directing the law anymore, or the upholding of the law. The police are directing it themselves, right? So that means that the police now have taken our money and they're using it as they see fit, as they want. Oh, we don't want it, we want to prosecute this person with criminal damage. Yeah, but it's defacement. Well, we want to put it through as criminal damage. Well, right, it's not criminal damage. It's defacement. And by the way, it's class F, and therefore it's exempt, right? So you won't be prosecuting anyone who says, well, the public, the commonality, right? That's why the commonality turn up outside the court and get everyone, the clerk, to put it down on paper, sign it, right? Send it up to Parliament. This is the thing. The due process. Now, the police only seem to think that it's their due process, right? That there's only the due process of criminal law is the only thing that matters in this country, right? Unless you're suing, someone for, sewage water or something, right? And then, why would you need to arrest someone or, get any evidence for anything, right? It's all lawyers and paperwork, right? The law is there for us, for each other, right? To govern each other, just like when it was with civil arrest, right? It's meant to be like it was when you had civil arrest, right? People, bringing a suit against each other, and the police were the moderators of it. The police were the porters, the chaperones of criminal law, because we went up to them, right? And then we put the money in the account, and then they could do what we tell them to do, right? But it's not like that anymore. Because now we've got it's a standing army, right? And it's Sir Robert Peel has created and built up now a standing army, right? And the MPs think that it's their army, right? Oh, it's Keir Starmer's army, or it is, Madame Tussauds' army, right? Or the Secretary of State for Policing's army, or even the police chief's own army, right? Because, all these medals he's got and awards and so forth and knighthoods. So, he's serving the king. But not king and country, just king, right? Now, I don't have anything against Charles if he obeys the law and follows the law and his oath, right? Which he's meant to do, right? But this is the thing, right? We are not directing the police now. And that is alarming, distressing, and extremely dangerous and serious, because they're actually getting more and more equipment, they're getting more and more resources, they're getting more and more funding, our money, and they're using it for what they want to do with it, right? And what MI5 wants to do with it, and what Keir Starmer wants to do with it, right? And what high-up-ranking police chiefs and inspectors want to do with it, right? Now, what they're doing with it should be what we tick in a box on a piece of paper, count them up, and the most counts on the paper is what the police do. So if we want people moved out of this country, right, that's what they do, right? Not what Keir Starmer says, right? Because we didn't even have a prime minister, right? We didn't even have a prime minister. We have a Speaker of Parliament and an Attorney General who is elected and voted in, right? We didn't even have a Prime Minister. So the Labour Party and the Conservative Party, it's not their country. They don't own it and they don't direct police. We direct the popularist vote, the commonality. I meant to direct the police in law and order, right? Obviously, it's the king's in charge because obviously, after the Civil War, right? But it's not about the king or Charles, right? It's about, at the moment, we've got various problems, including the police themselves, and they're on Red Bull mission. They're not going to do themselves, and this is the main problem with the police, right? They're not just going to fuck each other. They're not going to do law sex with each other. Oh, let's have a big sex fest with the law and, arrest each other. They're not going to join themselves in holy matrimony with handcuffs, right? And like every police officer pair themselves together and arrest the other one, right? Because of all the illegal road signage, illegal speeding tickets they've given out, all the arresting processes illegally and the rest of them. They're not going to do that. They're not going to put their hands up and say, I'm guilty, right? They're going to try to get out of it. That means that we've got mass widespread corruption. Now, if the police think that this is bad, what I'm saying, I am speaking the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. So help me God, it is a fact, right? And if any police officer, right, they want to get you in a courtroom and make sure that you cannot get your evidence in there. You can't get what's said. It's not a place where you go in to get the truth and fact heard, to find out what the reality is and the truth, and have law applied. It's to get you in there, make sure that you don't get heard in anything said, and make sure it gets what the police film, the police say, and what the police want, and get what the police want out of it, right? And everything else is censored. I've just seen a policewoman. There was a police guy beating up about 10, 20 police officers, beating up a guy. One of the police officers was punching him, and the policewoman's there filming the opposite direction. It's like some kind of porn star who's not filming the sex action going on, right? This is what now is happening, right? Now, the police, we need to get a grip on that collar, right, and say, you will do what we tell you to do, or you are not going to be a police officer. You won't work as one. We need an act of law where we elect every single police officer is accountable to the public, with a petition form of immediate removal from service if the public collect 100 signatures. Any officer that gets 100 signatures is gone. Poof, sacked, gone. If 100 people collect signatures of any officer, gone, sacked, straight away, 100 signatures, bang, gone, sacked, never worked for the police, ever again. And that is how it should be. And that is the law that we need to get put through, because we are telling them what to do. We tell them what to do, right? And this is the problem, not ministers in Parliament. Because ministers in Parliament, right, are lying. Look at Farage. The media has made Farage into some kind of demigod. He's a criminal. He used talking pints to boost his popularity when it was paid for privately. I reported it to the police and the investigators have done nothing, right? Even though the investigator was umming and ahhing because he didn't really want to do it, and he knows that there's some crime going on in the elections, right? But they're not doing it. So they're actually against the public. And the media are backing up Farage, right? I am not lying. I am not lying on oath, on truth. Farage has been made popular by Talking Pints. They've had MPs on, right? Priti Patel, football managers, all these people, right? So the police are behind the media, right? They're making new demagogue MPs, and the police aren't prosecuting criminals. They won't do it. So if they're not going to do it, who's going to do it, right? And, we've already given the police all the money, all the tax money, and then they want us to pay for it privately if we want to do it, because they're not going to do it. So if we want them sorting out, then we're going to get more money to do it privately ourselves. So they're having a laugh, right? These online police people that the Secretary of State for Policing is setting up, right? We're paying for that, yet they're not prosecuting Mark Zuckerberg. They're not prosecuting YouTube or Sergey Brin, right? They're against us. Our police are against us, and they're liars. Flaming liars who'll punch you in the ribs and point the camera the other way while they're doing it, right? I've got the video, right? These police will punch you in the ribs and kick you in the balls while they're filming the other way. It's despicable, right? That is despicable. Every single one of them who has prosecuted a protester needs to be arrested and prosecuted for contempt in law, right? Now, that Secretary of State for Policing, right? She needs to be removed by vote. And you can do it to remove any MP. And Jamie Stone is blocking that petition site. He's blocking it. He won't let us run it, because he knows we'll collect the signatures. So it's like the Die Hard movie. We've got MPs, right, who have hijacked Parliament, like the terrorists on Die Hard, right, taking over the building. They won't let us run the petitions to lawfully remove them. So they've hijacked this country, right? They've hijacked this country. So Mark Rowley and the head of the army, which is actually, we've got John Healey, right? They're hijacking this country. They're hijacking this country. Has been hijacked by criminals, right? Now, the police should be ashamed of themselves, right? They're not helping us get our media back up. They're not taking any action against the Americans. They're actually against us, right, Tim? So you tell me what to do about it. You tell me what to do about it.